Hello and welcome to Independent Podcast Service, a reference that David still doesn't get, but hopefully will next week, I think. Maybe. Anyway, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.
And this week we are discussing the 1974 television film The Night Strangler. This originally aired, 1973, originally aired on January 16th, 1973, and is a sequel to the previous year's Night Stalker. Alrighty, so let us start off with 1973 in video games, Dave.
Still probably Pong, because it was the big thing last time we started chatting about it. Not too sure if they managed much anything else, though the competition was fierce in those years.
So, I have the best-selling arcade cabinets of the year.
Oh?
Okay. So, Pong is number one, obviously. Followed by Pro Tennis, which is basically just Pong again.
Yeah, understandable.
And then Winner, which is again Pong. And then
Mildly surprised. I figured that it would have been one of the other ones. Winner was kind of the last go-getter one for that. Interesting.
And then Super Soccer, which was also Pong. And then Tennis Tourney, which is also Pong. And TV Tennis, which is also Pong.
So, just for any of you younger viewers, I know this sounds a little weird, but back in the day, for old video games, you had to use your imagination. So there was a lot of stuff like this. It's this isn't Pong, it's tennis. It isn't tennis, it's soccer.
Yeah, because they had about 10 pixels on screen, and that's about all you got.
Yeah.
Then we had Gotcha, which is a maze game, so that wasn't Pong.
Something different. Hooray!
You had a game called Asteroid Space Race, which was a racing game. And then you had another game called Space Race made by a different company, which is also a racing game.
Understandable. Mildly surprised. You just add one word in front of it and it will pretty much go along.
And then you had hockey, TV hockey, and volley, which were all Pong as well. So out of the top 10 selling cabinets, 7 of them were Pong.
Yeah, understandable. Surprisingly enough, we haven't had anything that big since. So, it comes in waves.
Alrighty, so let us move on to the number one film in America this week, Dave. Any idea what it could be? I'd be a little surprised if you know this movie.
Okay, because my first guess was because of the last time you mentioned it, it was like, well, Diamonds Were Forever is the Bond movie, but whether or not that would have the staying power with what came out next, I question.
So this was a big hit at the time, and it did get a remake, I want to say, early to mid-2000s, somewhere around there. But I would be kind of surprised if you're familiar with it.
Well, with you saying that, and again, my particular thought process, it's the question of whether or not it was kind of one of the horror remakes or whatnot, or if it was a typical kind of action movie that they kind of roll out every... Oh, you shush. The one particular thing that came to my mind is Halloween, but I think that's still a couple years off.
No, it's not Halloween. It's a movie called The Poseidon Adventure.
Supposedly understandable, but I think I might need context.
It's basically like a cruise ship sinks in the ocean, and it's like a disaster film.
Okay. So which one would it count as? Like Titanic or one of the Battleship movies, or?
No, there was a remake called Poseidon in 2006.
Okay.
Which, was there anybody that you would know in that movie? Kurt Russell, Richard Dreyfuss. Yeah, there were some people in that remake.
No, it's understandable, I suppose, but it's just kind of the case of disaster movie. In some cases, it's good, but depending on how disaster movies were kind of at the time and how big some of them kind of went, kind of get lost in a shuffle.
Alrighty, and finally, we move on to the number one song in America this week. January 73.
Whether or not to look into this, because I was mildly curious. Because knowing from the last week, it's like, oh my gosh, I actually somewhat know this song. The
Oh.
earworm jammed into my head.
Dave,
But
I can guarantee you know this song because I know this song.
again, nothing immediately comes to mind.
So it is a little tune that I'm sorry, Dave. It's going to be stuck in your head the minute I say the title. It's a song called "You're So Vain" by Carly Simon.
Surprisingly enough, nothing is there. Though I wouldn't be surprised if a couple lyrics or notes into the song, it'd be like, there it is.
"You're So Vain." You probably think the song is about you. Nothing.
Still nothing, amazingly enough.
Okay, wow. I'm surprised that I know a song that you don't. That's hilarious. Anyway, let us move on to the movie. So, okay, now I just want to check. The version you watched, was it 90 minutes or was it 74, 75?
I think like hour and 30.
Okay, so 90 minutes. Okay. So the original TV version of this was 74 minutes.
Okay, so it was cut down a little bit.
Yes. The version that apparently we both watched was the DVD version, which is 90 minutes. I don't have an exact breakdown of what's different, although I could take some guesses.
Most likely the stuff at the end with how much they decided to show off.
Yeah. They wanted to show off.
And yes, but on the other hand, also understandable.
They wanted to show off all those beautiful sets that they built. Yeah. Anyway, let us get into the episode. So, it's 1973, and reporter Carl Kolchak is now in Seattle, Washington, having been run out of Las Vegas at the end of the last film. He's hired by his former editor, Tony Vincenzo, to cover a series of killings in which the victims, all exotic dancers, are strangled, have their necks crushed, and are then drained of a few ounces of blood, which we're going to get into this because this is a bunch of bullshit right here.
Now I wouldn't be surprised. The one thought came across the mind of like, oh, this supposedly has scientific elements, and it's like, movie in the 70s with scientific elements.
Okay, so I did a little research on this because when they said that that the killer extracted approximately, I think it was 6 cc's of blood, I was like, that sets off my bullshit detector. So I did a little Googling, and 6 cc's of blood is the equivalent of 6 milliliters.
It's a little bit excessive from the sound of it.
Well, no, 6 milliliters is tiny, like a minuscule amount.
About the amount that a doctor would probably take for maybe a blood sample typically, or more so?
I feel like they take more than that for a blood test. Let's just do a quick Google here. Let's see if I can... generally speaking, a reference for a blood calcium test in adults is between... Oh, no, that's something different. The amount drawn... how much blood is drawn for a blood test? Okay, here, let's see. For other tests... Oh, it depends on the type of test that's being done, but it's anywhere from 1 to 25 milliliters. So, it would be rough. I guess the amount for a blood test is roughly accurate, but your body contains 1.2 to 1.5 gallons on average. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I figured that the person who they extracted this from is a relatively small woman, right? She looks like she's under 5'6". Like, she's quite small. So I figured, let's say she's at the lowest. Let's give the movie the benefit of the doubt and say she is at the lowest range of average, which is 1.2 gallons. That's about 4,500 milliliters. And they're telling me that they can detect a difference of 6 milliliters. No. That is not science. That is bullshit.
No, that kind of sounds like just based off reporting. It's like, did police want to know, and the doctors are just like, 6 milliliters?
Because that is a variance of less than 1%. Like, there's no way that you would be able to say, like, oh, they took this much. Anyway. A coroner's report reveals all the victims had traces of rotting flesh on their necks, which is cool. Researcher Titus Berry discovers that there's a similar rash of killings in 1952, setting Kolchak on the trail of another unbelievable story. Kolchak is stonewalled by the police, who want to have certain details of the murders kept secret. Out of burning curiosity, Barry researches further back and learns of another series of murders in 1931. Barry and Kolchak discover that similar murders have been occurring every 21 years since 1889, with each series of murders taking place over a period of 18 days. Kolchak determines that the killer needs the blood for a kind of elixir of life, which keeps him alive for 21 years at a time. Of course, no one believes Kolchak, and the powers that be want to silence him. Barry uncovers further clues in an old interview with Mark Twain, leading to Dr. Richard Malcolm, a surgeon in the Union Army during the Civil War, who is one of the original staff at Seattle's Westside Mercy Hospital. Though the hospital is long gone, Kolchak goes to the clinic standing on the site in the hope that they might have some of the hospital's old records. But he finds something much more important just inside the front door. A painting of the clinic's founder, Dr. Malcolm Richards. I almost said Malcolm Reynolds, and that is not right. Who is a spitting image of Richard Malcolm. Kolchak calls Barry to meet him there and proceeds to alter the painting to make the similarity more obvious. Barry is amazed, but the police are less than impressed, and Kolchak is arrested. Finally, Kolchak and Barry convince the police and their boss of the facts, that the killer is really practically immortal, and that he will kill again, but the story is once again suppressed. Kolchak, working with the helpful exotic dancer Louise, enters into a race against time to stop the killer before he is able to complete the creation of his elixir and disappear for another 21 years. The Seattle Underground, under the old clinic, in the Seattle Underground, under the old clinic, Kolchak has a face-to-face confrontation with Dr. Malcolm/Richards. The Night Strangler admits that he first tried the elixir in 1868 and that he had hoped to spread the knowledge of immortality until he started aging again in 1889, and his family also died. Their mummified remains are kept near the doctor's laboratory. He intends to continue each 21-year cycle until he can make the process permanent. Before the Night Strangler can drink his sixth dose of elixir, Kolchak smashes the beaker and the Night Strangler tries to kill Kolchak, but fails due to rapidly aging. As the police burst into the room, the aging killer commits suicide by throwing himself outside a high window. The film concludes on a once again unemployed Kolchak bickering with Vincenzo and Louise as Carl drives the three of them to New York City. So, what did you think of this film, Dave?
With this particular one, it was definitely interesting. Though the one biggest, I wouldn't exactly say gripe, but one nagging thing that kind of went off in my head was the case that, man, if you weren't careful, you'd pretty much mistake this movie for the other movie, wouldn't you? Aside from setting, aspect, and everything else, pretty much everything is play for play, just about the same.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And on the one hand, it was the thought of, I don't know, it might have just been the case of that's kind of the movie style for the mystery solving crime sort of thing at the time, and there wasn't too much variation to it. And again, money talks. If it was good from that sort of movie, it probably wouldn't have been that bad to do that sort of thing again. But it's kind of the case of, this probably would not fly in today's standards.
Oh, no, like, it's very clear that I think I said this in our previous video, but, like, they basically just reused the same script and just changed the location and a few minor details. Like, I know they didn't have Word at the time, but this was basically Control F on the keyboard, change vampire to, like, Mad Doctor, and you're done.
But I think aside from that, one of the interesting things is they had a bit more fun with the character aspects. The first thing was with minor characters. Again, I don't think that they got too much notoriety within the movie or whatnot, but especially the archiving librarian that was in there running through the additional information for Kolchak, all of the introductions of, again, I can't remember all the specific things, but the belly dancers and other people that were victims going through the story, and other stuff from there, but especially some of the news crew. I don't believe that she specifically got a name, but the older woman uh, working with the newspaper saying, I'll go out to those particular streets at night and see if that killer would try to take me down. And her kind of playful banter with Kolchak as he's working along with the case.
Yeah, there's definitely, and I think it's because we did watch the version with like a longer runtime, is they do have a little bit more time to do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And because
Oh, go ahead.
and because this is a sequel, like we already kind of know who Kolchak is, so we don't have to spend as much time introducing him to the audience. We can kind of spend that extra couple of minutes with some side characters.
And I think one particularly interesting thing was one character he went searching into, again, for more occult information, was a college professor that worked on that particular stuff. And turns out that it is a Miss Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch in the West in Wizard of Oz.
Yes, it's yeah. I didn't actually know that even like until you brought it up before we started recording, but that's pretty cool. This actually, like, if you look at it, like, I'll argue that like there's not a ton of huge stars in this, but there's a lot of like really good like character actors in it, and she's a perfect example of that.
Indeed.
Yeah, or even like Darren McGavin, who plays Kolchak. He's not like a huge star, but he was like a really well-known character actor at the time. Or like Simon Oakland, who plays Tony Vincenzo. Again, dude who worked forever and like always was working, had been in a bunch of movies, done a bunch of TV shows, but wasn't like a huge star.
So, additionally, the one particular aspect that you like about this movie, I'm going to have to agree. End of the movie, oh man, that set of the underground Seattle was neat.
I know, I love that. Oh, it's my favorite. So, I don't know if you know this, but the whole underground Seattle thing is actually okay. So obviously they're fictionalizing parts of it for the movie, but like the idea of like there being a city under Seattle that you can go visit is actually real.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I absolutely have to see at some point because that looks so cool.
Indeed. It was one of the particular things I believe back in high school years we did take trips down to the States for field trips and other sorts of stuff like that. And I did get the chance to get into Seattle, but just with scheduling, never got the chance to check that out.
You do? Oh, okay. Because I know, like, I went to the Ashland thing 2 years in a row, but we didn't get to go to Seattle. Which was sad, but that was fun. Anyway, so what happens after this movie? So you might think that because this movie was successful, that they initially planned on doing the TV show. However, that wasn't the original plan. The original plan was for a third movie.
Okay.
So the third movie was going to had a working title of The Night Killers.
Okay. Still sticking with title, but adding multiple villains.
Well, we'll get into that because I have a brief synopsis of what was going to happen in this film. So it was to be set in Honolulu, Hawaii. Okay. And the script had Tony Vincenzo hiring Kolchak to work for him once again. Kolchak discovers a cover-up, this time involving a mysterious UFO, a nuclear power plant, and important people being murdered and replaced by androids. Kolchak ties all of this together, believing that the aliens on the UFO landed on Earth intending to set up a colony and replacing key government figures with those androids to assist them in establishing their secret colony.
Because again, on the one hand, I can see it. Supposedly see it there. But there's also the thing ringing in my head. It's like, wow, if you wanted a 90-degree turn, here it is.
Yeah, so the last two movies, like this one and the previous one, were very much like they're serial killer movies, and they just happen to have a dash of the supernatural. Whereas this one, they were going to go full on UFO. Yep.
And I think with the particular things you kind of mentioned with the movie, getting things done in Hawaii and whatnot, it's like, That seems a little high for the movie and whatnot to get together, but shoot for the stars, I suppose.
However, that obviously did not happen. Instead, we got a TV series, which would premiere in September of 1974. We're not going to get into that yet. So next week we will start with the first episode of the TV series, which is... Dave, I hope you like the serial killer aspect because we're sticking with it.
Understandable. As long as we supposedly get interesting aspect to it, but again, heading with TV show aspect, I wouldn't be surprised if it just stuck to a serial day of the week serial killer aspect.
So I will say that we will kind of move on to different kinds of monsters pretty quickly. We definitely don't stick with just being like that kind of like serial killer kind of thing for long.
Mm-hmm.
However, the first episode is entitled The Ripper.
Well, let's go big or go home, I suppose.
Yes, so just a quick synopsis. Carl may be up against the original Jack the Ripper, a black-caped, bullet-resistant superhuman killer of women. So it's Jack the Ripper to start off. That's, like you said, go big or go home. And we're also going to meet some new characters. Obviously, Kolchak is going to be back, and Vincenzo, but we're also going to be introduced to some new crew at their new office. They're going to have an office now.
Okay. Just from the sounds of it, the one actress from the Strangler movie that Kolchak worked with wasn't going to be continuing on?
No, the only two that are from the movies, I believe, are Vincenzo and Kolchak.
Okay, because when I did see the end of the film, they were driving off, and she was also in the back of the vehicle. I was sort of thinking, okay, trio sort of thing. Sort of see how it goes, but then I also have to remember, oh right, it's Kolchak. He has terrible time with women with how it goes.
Yeah, and this was also the 70s when continuity wasn't really a thing.
That's also true.
But yes, it's going to be a good time, and I can't wait for you to get into this, because I'm going to warn you, there are going to be some bad special effects as we go on, but I think the show is really charming, so I think that'll make up for it.
Again, I'll be somewhat prepared as best as I can.
I don't know if you will be. But until next time, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.